Congressman Steve King, I want to welcome you to the to the Final Say radio show. Congressman,
Freud would be proud.
Well, thank you. I apologize I wasn't able to link in a little earlier. There's some things going on here in this town.
Oh, sure. We're having a comedy of the errors, and of course, my former show, the Conservative Commandos radio show, that was one of those Freudian slips. Congressman, I know you've been incredibly busy, and you guys had a vote today, which I'm very excited about, which would involve auditing the Fed. But, of course, that's not why we brought you on today. We brought you on to discuss some of the things going on, such as the Farm Bill, and also some of the great work you've been doing, including your op-ed in the Washington Times regarding flood prevention for the Missouri River, which just something that we really need to look into and take care of.
Well, yes, there is a lot going on, and we can start wherever you like. And then, of course, we're going to have a hearing on English as the official language, it looks like next week, too.
Yes.
So that surprised me one day in a period of, I think, an hour and 20 minutes. I had Janet Napolitano before the Judiciary Committee under oath, so I had some questions to ask her, and hopefully I utilized my minutes well there. I ran over to the floor and offered an amendment to protect the Defense of Marriage Act against Barack Obama, our Commander-in-Chief's effort to have gay marriage on our military bases and people in uniform, and then raced back over to my office to catch a call from a state attorney general who's looking at joining on our lawsuit against the president. So that was an hour and 20-minute little snapshot here in a day in the life of, and I just want to say I'm grateful to have the chance to engage at that pace. You get a lot of living in and a few things done.
No. Well, we know how hard you work there, and it's funny. I've got a whole pile of everything that you've been working on, and you've covered most of it. Could we real quick? This is interesting. In the Judiciary Committee hearing with Janet Napolitano, could you give us a little background on it?
Well, yes, and she comes before the committee once or twice a year under oath as part of our oversight of the Judiciary Committee to review the policies of the Department of Homeland Security. And, of course, the subject matter that I was most interested in was the memorandum that she issued on June 15th that grants amnesty to some between 800,000 and 1.4 million, or maybe 3 or 4 million people altogether. This is the DREAM Act Light, as some will say, where the president has decided that Congress wouldn't pass the DREAM Act, so he's going to implement it and do so by just simply by executive edict. And the president did a press conference, maybe 3 hours after Janet Napolitano issued this memorandum. I asked her if she coordinated with the president. No. Did the president approve this? Well, no. There wasn't any synchronization going on between you and the White House? Well, no. And so how am I to believe that the president held a press conference 3 hours after you issued the memorandum? Well, it's just how things work, is essentially her answer. And she was very vague and evasive throughout her whole testimony before the committee, not just with me. And so I made the point that memorandum that grants amnesty creates 4 classes of people, and it directs the U.S. Citizenship Immigration Services, the people that do the naturalization and those things, it directs them to create a work permit manufactured out of thin air. All of the visas that exist are all visas created by Congress, not by the President or the Secretary of Homeland Security. And it's clearly a constitutional violation, and it's an attempt to legislate by executive edict. And I made that point and asked her to withdraw the memorandum. She refused, and she said, I'm right on the Constitution, I'm right on the law, and I'm right on the policy. I said, you're wrong on all of that, and I'll see you in court, was the answer. I'll see you in litigation, was the exact response. And we are, and I am, bringing a suit against the President and Janet Napolitano for their violation of the separation of powers and their attempt to legislate by executive edict. And I don't intend to back off, and we've had at the table the best constitutional lawyers in the country, and they all agree that if the case can be heard on the merits, we're in a very good position to succeed. And I want to ask the court for a writ of mandamus to order the President to enforce the law. And that's the best that we can accomplish through the court system, and we can accomplish more through the electoral process. But I take an oath to uphold the Constitution, and so does everybody in this House and Senate, and people in the military and the executive branch as well. But you give an oath, you take an oath, you have to take it seriously. And when I was a member of the Iowa Senate, then Governor Vilsack, and now, coincidentally, I suppose, the Secretary of Agriculture and one of the cabinet members under President Obama, he thought as a governor that he could, Tom Vilsack thought he could legislate by executive order, and issued an executive order to grant special protected status for sexual orientation and gender identity. And that was a violation of the separation of powers, and I took him to court, and in the case of King versus Vilsack, succeeded, and the court vacated his executive order. And I put me, though, through the arguments of the separation of powers and positioned me to understand this rule, and I think understand how to litigate it. So that's where we intend to go, and I think that we'll have a case that'll be filed in sometime probably less than a month. That's my hope. It's weeks, not months, before we get one filed.
Well, Congressman, this is John Rappaport. Thank you so much for taking the time to fight this good fight. Because besides the importance of the specific acts you're working on, if we lose the battle of the separation of powers and the executive branch, usurps more than the Constitution allows, then all of these other acts are going to easily be weakened, and Congress loses the ability to create laws and to do its proper oversight.
Well, John, that's completely right, and this president has shown, well, he's lawless, and I don't know that there's a better description for it. The number of places where he's just simply violated the law. I host a breakfast on Wednesday mornings. I chair the Conservative Opportunity Society, and our breakfast speaker this morning was Robert Rector of the Heritage Foundation, who was likely the author of the Welfare to Work program back in the 90s, and he's still very active and very much on top of things. And I think I'm probably a little older than he is too on top of it, but he made the point that the president's order that they were going to waive the work requirement for one of the welfare programs is a direct violation of the law, too. And so you have the president wiping out welfare to work, establishing the DREAM Act, all of this by executive edict, giving states waivers on the No Child Left Behind, and the conscience protection, ordering insurance companies to provide contraceptives, birth control pills, I should say, not just contraceptives, birth control pills, sterilizations, and abortifacients, all against their conscience of the people paying the premium, and certainly against the conscience of many of our churches, but especially the Catholic Church. All of that going on, and there are a few others besides. Oh, yes, and the recess appointments by President Obama, when he declared the Senate to not be in session, even though they gabbled in that day in order to specifically be in session. So if a president can just simply announce that the Senate is not in session, if he can write law, sometimes by executive edict. Here's one that really was the topper, though. When the president ran afoul of the Catholic Church on the religious conscience protection, and he suffered about 2 weeks of being pounded in public criticism for requiring that the churches, even the health providers that are religiously based, that they would also, along with every other one, have to provide contraceptives, sterilizations, and abortifacients. That was a Kathleen Sebelius issued rule, and that rule is still on the books verbatim. It hasn't changed a bit. The only thing that changed was President Obama stepped up to the podium at noon on a Friday, and he said, now I'm going to make a, quote, an accommodation to the religious organizations, and I'm going to require that the insurance companies provide these things for free instead of the churches, the insurance companies. Now, that's terrible to think that a president would assume upon himself the kind of authority to just simply look at a rule, realize they made a political mistake, and turn around and say to the insurance companies, now you provide this for free. That's terrible. But worse than that is, that's the first and the only time I know of in the history of this country that a president has had the audacity to attempt to legislate, not by executive order, but by press conference. All he did is say so at a press conference, not a letter changed in any of the rules. So we have a rogue president on our hands that used to teach constitutional law, and now he's a lawless president in the White House, just to put it bluntly.
I don't think you could say it any better. And it is scary for somebody to have a law background, for somebody who that's what you've done, to hold the position that he does and have so little respect for the actual law and for the oath taken. It is. It's just absolutely troubling.
Well, yes, and the Founding Fathers envisioned that each branch of government would protect its power that's granted to it in the Constitution, jealously protect that power. And the time that I've been here in this Congress, I see most of the members go in the other direction. They don't want the conflict. They don't want to take criticism from the public. They're worried about getting reelected instead of the oath that they made to God and country. And we need a strong group of people here that will come in here and stand on principle and understand what those principles are and defend them. And
absolutely, and I think the same way he's taken the Constitution for granted, right? There's also usurping power from the states. I think that there's an equal balance of power that needs to be struck between the federal government and the state governments, and this president has shown that he has no problem running roughshod on the states, nor contemplating or signing foreign treaties that would completely neuter powers that the Constitution absolutely intended for the states to hold, and that's just his way of doing business.
You have all that going on. It's the Chicago way writ large, is what it is, and it is without a constitutional conscience. But I don't believe that it could be alleged effectively that they don't know what they're doing. I think they do. I think they're undermining America intentionally and willfully. They want to shape a new America that's not controlled by the Constitution. They understand that if this society is going to change in the way they want it to change, and that means socialism is a very nice word for what they're trying to do to America. I think it goes beyond that. But they have to plow their way through a lot of our important institutions. One of them is our religious institutions. Our Christianity as a base, Judeo-Christianity is, I think, a more equitable description of it. They have to plow through marriage, because marriage is where we hold our values when we pour them down through into the next generation. And if mom and dad, if a man and a woman get together and join together in holy matrimony, and they're blessed with children, and their religious beliefs, their moral beliefs, their work ethic, the entire culture, they teach to their children. And the government is an intervener. And so that they would like to, this administration would like to be an intervener in a greater way than they're able to now. And if what's going to save America is if parents teach their children well, if they educate them in the Constitution and in the rule of law, and with a core component of their life being that of a life of faith, and that we have an obligation to the next generation to leave this world in a better, more responsible way, but also to pass into the next generation, and historical understanding of how we got to where we are today and what it takes to hold those pillars of American exceptionalism together and refurbish them. If we teach that well, we can save this country. And if we do not, we're off the abyss into chaos and economic Armageddon.
Yes. Congressman King?
Yes, sir.
Amen. Listen, I want to thank you so much for joining John and I on the Final Say radio show today. I know you're incredibly busy, so I'll let you get back to the busy work you have today. And I know you'll be back to join us in the future. And again, on behalf of our program, John and I, our screener Beatrice, thank you for the wonderful job that you're doing, the tremendous work. We look to our history and we have heroes of, George Washington types that we look at. In today's time, we look at Congressman Steve King.
Well, thank you very much for that. I count it as a privilege and an honor to be able to step up every day and take on the other side. And whatever the Lord has in store for us, it'll be His victory when the time comes. It'll be in His time. Meanwhile, I think we'll all be judged by the effort we put out and utilizing the gifts He's given us. So I appreciate the time to say a few things today and a chance to vent myself. And I tend to go out and take them on again right now. So thanks for the chance to talk today, and thanks for all you do.
It was our pleasure.
Excellent. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Goodbye.
You're welcome.